The alarm tore through the research dome before I even got the ring out of my pocket. Red lights spun across the walls. The floor shook once, then again, and a voice on the overhead speaker said the shield grid on the east side had failed. I was kneeling in front of Lyra, one hand holding a small metal ring shaped from compressed starlight crystal, and for one full second neither of us moved, because neither of us could believe the timing. "Now," Lyra said, "of all moments, you pick this one." "I didn't pick it," I said. "The universe picked it. Marry me anyway." Outside, something big hit the outer wall of the dome, and the whole structure groaned like a ship taking a wave. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra looked at the ring, looked at me, and grabbed my collar with both hands. "Yes," she said. "Now get up before we die engaged." We ran. The corridor outside the common room was already filling with smoke from a burst coolant line. My boots slipped on the wet floor as I pulled Lyra around a fallen support beam. Behind us, through a cracked viewport, I saw the thing that had hit the dome. It was not a ship, it was a swarm, hundreds of small metal drones moving together like a school of fish, cutting through the sky in a shape that kept folding and unfolding, hunting for another point to strike. "Scavenger swarm," Lyra shouted over the noise. "They come for the mineral core under this outpost. They will not stop until the dome is open. Then we need to get to the transport bay. The transport bay is on the other side of the swarm." I did not have a clever answer for that, so I just kept running. We reached the security station where my friend Nathan Cole was already strapping a pack to his back, sweat cutting lines through the dust on his face. Nathan had been stationed here longer than me, and he knew the tunnels better than anyone alive. "Marcus, thank the stars," he said when he saw me. "I thought you were still in the garden dome." I was proposing. Nathan blinked at me like I had grown a second head. "You picked today?" "Everyone keeps saying that, like I had a calendar full of quiet days to choose from." Another impact rocked the building. A support strut above us bent inward with a metal scream, and Nathan grabbed both of us and pulled us through a side door just as the ceiling section behind us collapsed in a wave of sparks and debris. My ears rang. Lyra's hand found mine in the dark and held on hard. "There is a maintenance shaft 2 levels down," Nathan said, coughing. "It leads to the old mining tunnels. Those tunnels connect to the ridge outside the outpost. If we can reach the ridge, the swarm will lose our heat signature in the rock." "And if we can't reach the ridge?" "Then we find out what it feels like to be recycled into drone parts." We moved fast through the dark hallway, using the wall lights that still worked to guide us. The shaking under our feet did not stop. Every few seconds, another impact somewhere in the dome sent a shudder through the metal, and I kept picturing the swarm eating through the structure layer by layer, like insects through wood. At the maintenance shaft, the ladder down was slick with condensation. Lyra went first, moving with more grace on 6 limbs than I could manage on 2, and I followed with Nathan close behind. The tunnels below were narrow, lit only by our wrist lamps, the air thick with old dust and the smell of cut stone. "How far to the ridge?" I asked. 20 minutes on foot," Nathan said. "Less if nothing tries to eat us." We had gone maybe 5 minutes when the tunnel wall in front of us exploded inward. I threw myself sideways and pulled Lyra down with me, as chunks of rock and metal sprayed past. Through the settling dust, a single drone hovered in the new gap, its sensor lens rotating to find us. It was small, about the size of a dinner plate, but it moved with a speed that made my stomach drop. Nathan fired his hand flare gun without hesitation. The bright flash blinded the drone's sensor for half a second, long enough for him to slam it against the tunnel wall with a length of pipe. It sparked once and dropped, dead. "One down," he said, breathing hard. "A few hundred more up there." "That is not a comforting number," Lyra said. We kept moving, faster now, adrenaline pushing us past the ache in our legs. The tunnel curved upward, and I could feel a change in the air, cooler and cleaner, which meant we were getting close to the surface. Then the whole tunnel lit up orange from somewhere ahead, and a wave of heat rolled toward us. "They found the tunnel entrance," Nathan said. "They are trying to seal us in from both ends." "So we go faster," I said, and we did, sprinting the last stretch with the light growing brighter behind us, and the smell of burning stone filling my lungs. We burst out onto the ridge, just as the tunnel behind us collapsed in a roar of fire and dust. I turned in time to see the opening seal shut completely, cutting off the only way back inside the dome. For a moment, none of us said anything. We just stood there, coughing, staring at the ruined outpost below us, its dome cracked open like an egg, the swarm still circling and diving through the gap like a storm of metal insects. "We are stuck out here," I said. "No transport, no shelter, and a swarm that wants to strip everything down to raw metal." Lyra's hand tightened around mine. "Not stuck, wait." I followed her gaze to the sky. At first I thought it was another cluster of drones, but the shapes moving through the clouds were too smooth, too fast, cutting the air in tight, controlled lines, instead of the swarm's chaotic drift. 4 small craft broke through the cloud layer and dropped toward the ridge with a precision that looked almost rehearsed. "Is that?" Nathan started, then stopped. "My sisters," Lyra said, and for the first time since the alarm went off, she smiled. The 4 craft landed on the flat stone in a perfect line, kicking up dust that stung my eyes. The hatches opened before the engines even finished spinning down, and out stepped Vesa, Thren, Kessa, and Nith, each of them already moving toward us with the kind of speed that told me they had not come to talk. "You proposed during a swarm attack," Vesa said, not even out of breath. "That is either very brave or very foolish." "Can we discuss my life choices after the part where we are not being hunted by machines?" I said. Kessa was already scanning the sky with a device strapped to her forearm. "The swarm core signal is coming from the east peak. If we destroy the core, the individual drones lose coordination and scatter. If we do not, they will keep tearing this outpost apart piece by piece, and then they will come looking for us out here." "How do we destroy a core we cannot see?" Nathan asked. Thren pulled a compact weapon from her back, the kind that looked built for precision rather than raw damage. "We do not need to see it. We need to get close enough for Kessa to lock onto the signal. Then I disable it." "That sounds like it requires walking straight at the swarm," I said. "Yes," Thren said, like this was obvious. "That is generally how these things work." There was no time to argue, because at that moment, 3 drones broke off from the main swarm and shot toward the ridge, drawn by our heat signatures, the moment we stepped into open air. Neith moved first, faster than I had ever seen her move, and knocked the lead drone out of the air with a strike that sent it spinning into the rocks below. The second drone dove at Lyra, and I pulled her out of its path on instinct, feeling the wind of it pass so close it tugged at my sleeve. "East Peak," Kessa called out. "Half a kilometer, straight through the open ridge. No cover. No cover across open ground, toward a swarm of machines that just tried to kill us," I said. "Wonderful." "You wanted an interesting life," Lyra said, pulling me forward. "This is what interesting looks like." We ran across the ridge in a tight group, the sisters forming a rough shield around Lyra, Nathan, and me, cutting down drones that dropped toward us with sharp, efficient strikes. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Every few seconds, a drone would slip past the sisters and dive at one of us, and every time, someone was there to knock it away before it could get close enough to do damage. Halfway across the ridge, the ground in front of us cracked open, and a section of loose rock gave way under Nathan's feet. He grabbed the edge just in time, dangling over a drop that disappeared into darkness below. I dove forward and caught his wrist, my knees skidding across the stone, pain shooting up my arms as I held his weight. "Do not let go," Nathan said, his voice tight. I was not planning on it. Vesa appeared beside me a second later, grabbing Nathan's other arm, and together we hauled him back onto solid ground. He lay there for a moment, chest heaving, before pushing himself up. "Thank you," he said. "Truly." "Later," Kessa called. "The signal is getting stronger. We are close." We reached the base of the east peak just as the swarm above us shifted, folding into a tighter formation, almost like it had sensed what we were trying to do. Dozens of drones broke away from the main cloud and dropped toward the peak in a wave. "They are protecting the core," Thren said, "which means we are close." "How close?" "Close enough that I need 30 seconds without interruption to get a lock." 30 seconds, I repeated. "Against that many drones." "Then you had better be very useful for 30 seconds, Vesa said, already moving to intercept the first wave. What happened next is difficult to describe cleanly, because it happened fast, and from every direction at once. The sisters spread out, each holding a section of the approach, striking drones out of the air with movements that looked more like a dance than a fight. Nathan and I grabbed loose rocks and anything else we could find, throwing them at any drone that slipped through the line, buying seconds here and there. Lyra stood beside Kessa, watching the drone's patterns and calling out warnings a half-second before each new attack came, her instincts sharper than any scanner. A drone dropped straight toward me, faster than the others, its edges glowing with heat. I had no weapon and no time to dodge fully, so I threw myself sideways and felt the heat pass across my shoulder, close enough to sting through my jacket. I hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up in time to see Neth crush the drone against a rock with her bare hand, not even slowing her pace. 20 seconds, Kessa called. Another wave came, thicker than the last, drones diving in pairs now instead of alone. Thren took a hit to her shoulder, staggering but not falling, and kept working the device in her hands without pause. Vesa moved between two drones at once, redirecting both away from Lyra with a single sweeping motion. I had never seen anything like it. 4 sisters who fought like they shared one mind, each one finishing a motion the others had started. 10 seconds. The drones seemed to sense what was coming because the entire swarm shifted at once, diving toward the peak in a single mass, instead of scattered waves, as if trying to overwhelm us before the lock completed. I grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind a jagged outcrop of rock, just as the wave passed overhead, close enough that the wind of it knocked dust into my eyes. 5 seconds, Kessa shouted, her voice steady even as drones crashed against the rocks around her. 4, 3. Thren's device let out a sharp tone. Lock complete, she said, and fired. A single beam of light shot from the weapon in her hands, arcing up toward the peak and striking something hidden in the rock face, something that had been disguised as part of the mountain itself. For a moment nothing happened, and my heart sank, thinking it had failed. Then every drone in the sky stopped at once. They hung there, motionless, for a long, strange second, before dropping out of the air like puppets with their strings cut, clattering against the ridge and rolling to a stop across the stone. The silence that followed was almost louder than the fighting had been. I stood there, chest heaving, ears ringing, watching hundreds of dead machines litter the ground around us, and for the first time since the alarm went off, nobody was running. "It is done," Thren said quietly, lowering the weapon. "The core is destroyed." Nathan sat down hard on a flat rock, laughing in the way people laugh when they are too tired and too relieved to do anything else. Lyra wrapped her arms around me, all 4 of hers and my 2, holding on tight enough that I felt her heartbeat against my chest, still racing. "You are hurt," she said, noticing the burn across my shoulder. "I am engaged," I said. "I will take the trade." Vesa walked over, brushing dust from her sleeve, and looked at the ring, still somehow clutched in my hand through everything that had happened. She raised an eyebrow at her sister. "You said yes to this, during an attack." "I said yes because he did not run when it started," Lyra said. "That told me everything I needed to know." Kessa knelt beside Nathan, checking a small cut on his arm with careful hands, her earlier fierceness gone, replaced with something gentler. Nith was already recording the wreckage on a small device, muttering to herself about documentation and proof for the Outpost Council. Thren simply sat on a rock, watching the sun break through the settling dust, looking more tired than I had ever seen her. We made our way back down the ridge, slowly, past the sealed tunnel entrance, around the edge of the outpost where emergency crews were already arriving from the eastern station to assess the damage. The dome would need weeks of repair. The garden where I had first kneeled with the ring was now half buried under fallen structure. None of that seemed to matter as much as it should have. Lyra stopped at the edge of the ridge, looking back at the wreckage below, then at her sisters, then at me. "When I said yes," she said, "I meant it for all of this too. The chaos, the danger, whatever comes next." "I know," I said. "I am starting to understand that saying yes to you means saying yes to a great deal more than I expected. Regretting it already? Not for 1 second." Nathan clapped a hand on my uninjured shoulder. "For what it is worth, I have never seen a proposal survive a swarm attack, a collapsing tunnel, and a cliff-edge rescue. That has to count for something. It counts for a very strange story to tell at the wedding, I said. Vesa overheard that and turned, a small, sharp smile on her face. Wedding. Yes. We will need to discuss the arrangements. All four of us will be attending, of course. Of course, I said, because by now I expected nothing less. And staying afterward, Thren added. The sisterhood bond does not end at the ceremony. I know, I said again, and found that I meant it without hesitation this time. After watching them fight through fire and falling rock, and a swarm that should have ended us on that ridge, the idea of four fierce, loyal, slightly overwhelming sisters becoming a permanent part of my life did not feel like a burden anymore. It felt like gaining reinforcements. The sun climbed higher over the broken dome as we walked back toward the recovery teams, the six of us moving together in a loose, tired line, the danger behind us and something entirely new ahead. I looked down at the ring, still in my hand, dented slightly from where it had pressed against the rock during the fall, and slid it onto Lyra's finger properly this time. No alarms, no fire, just the quiet after the storm. Better late than never, she said. I promised you an interesting life, I said. I did not lie. She laughed, and for the first time since the alarm had first torn through the dome, the sound felt like the beginning of something, instead of a warning.